He kōna I purangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Alan, how are you?
All right.
Have I caught you in an okay time?
Yeah.
Alan is Alan Hall. He's the guy I made the Grove Road podcast about. It took him decades to clear his name. Alan was wrongfully convicted of murder in 1986 and finally exonerated in 2022.
Got like a weight taken off me.
He received $5 million in compensation a year later, some of which he used to purchase his own home north of Auckland, where he now lives with his little dog called Perky.
So how is life for you now?
A hell of a lot better since the conviction was overturned.
It was while researching Alan's case that I stumbled on Ross Appelgren's story. And I hate to perpetuate the myth that everyone in New Zealand knows each other, but it does turn out that Alan knew Ross in prison.
Can you recall where you spoke to him?
Green room in prison.
Did you know him well?
Reasonably well. We talked to each other. He came across as a real nice guy. He claimed he never did it. It wouldn't surprise me if he is innocent because the way the police sent me to prison. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was made into a scapegoat.
What advice, Alan, would you have for Ross's family who are trying to overturn his conviction?
Don't give up. Keep on finding it. My case only shows that it can be done.
I always had some sort of faith in the system, although it was shaken a few times, but I'm not on any sort of witch hunt and blaming anybody in particular for things, but I think there's still a lot of hard questions to be answered, and I think they're long overdue, most of them.
Welcome to Nark, an RNZ investigative podcast. I'm your host, Mike Wesley-Smith. This is episode 17, Faith.
I have an appointment with Ross Appelgren.
Thank you very much, sir. Come on through.
It's early 1994, and TV3 journalist Keith Davies is busy clearing prison security.
An interview with Ross Appelgren inside Paramaribo Jail.
An interview prompted by the authorities' extraordinary decision to send Ross's case back to the appeal court for a second time, following Danny's confession.
You haven't been found innocent. Are you innocent?
Yes, I am.
By now, Ross had served almost 7 years for killing Darcy Tahira, but while his appeal was on the move, he wasn't. His request for bail had been declined, so his freedom now lay in the hands of the parole board.
You're coming up for parole now. They may say to you, Ross, take the parole, walk, and we'll forget all about it.
No. I want my case back before the courts. If they release me, I'll carry on the fight.
It's taken a bit out of you, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's taken a bit out of all of us. It's most probably taught me a lot more than I've ever learned.
What has it taught you?
It's just not worth it anymore. I don't think I could go through it again if I was ever in the same situation, and they offered me to talk. As much as I like to live by my own codes, I don't know if I could do it again.
The pressure Ross and Julie were under made them write to the parole board, seeking Ross's early release on compassionate grounds.
Once more, I asked the board to look at the positive side of my life, not my past. I'm not a danger to society or to anyone. I'm 43 years old. I've spent approximately 18 years behind bars since 1967, a record I am far from proud of, but my future is bright and I know I will never be back. I ask for freedom. I have had enough.
Certainly in the corrections files, there's a lot of your letters to the parole board and seeking, intervention and help to get them out.
Yes, I've reread all those. Yeah, I did what I felt should be done at the time. As I say, it consumed me.
But Ross told Keith the idea of being released brought with it mixed feelings, because going on life parole meant Ross could be recalled to prison at any time if he breached his release conditions.
I don't want life parole for something I haven't done.
So proving your innocence is more important than your freedom?
It is. I want to get out, but it is more important. I'd like this whole thing wiped. I'd like the conviction wiped.
Ross's first parole application in June 1994 was declined. TV3 got Julie's reaction.
I'm so proud of Ross, the way he's handled everything. I have the greatest admiration for him, aside from the love I feel. And one day we're going to be married. Nothing's going to stand in our way.
Ross completed further rehabilitation courses and kept out of trouble. So when he applied for parole a year later, in June 1995, he was successful. All up, he'd done around 8 years for murder.
I suppose I could have played the hero and refused to leave, but there was so much waiting for me on the outside.
Well, we'd anticipated it for so long. It was just a relief that it was actually happening.
Ross walked out of prison for the last time on the 4th of December 1995.
As he left the last gate, a guard saw him out and said, "You'll be back." And Ross said, "No, I won't." And he never did. Never went back.
In news footage, Ross emerges with his legal papers in one arm and a huge smile on his face. He walked straight into a mighty big hug from Julie as the media watched on.
It was a great moment. It was a great moment. Just happy to see the relief on his face. We just all felt relieved. It had been a long, long haul to get to that point.
When reporters asked Ross how he was feeling, he simply replied, "Good," before jumping into a waiting car.
He was, pretty excited, but driving home was an issue for him because he obviously hadn't been in a car for a long while. So it all felt too fast for him. That was a bit unnerving for him, just getting used to driving in the car. But yeah, he adjusted.
Back at Julie's place, Ross was greeted with balloons and a massive sign in the front yard.
Yeah, the welcome home sign we'd put up in the morning. So yeah, it was an overwhelming time for him to see all that and the yard and the house and everything. It was what had been anticipated for a long while.
With Ross finally free, the couple wasted no time locking in a date for their wedding, the 23rd of December 1995, just 19 days after Ross got out. You'll remember they had to cancel the last one 3.5 years earlier when Ross was convicted at the retrial. Was it good to be able to dust off the wedding dress and...
Yes, it was just planning all over again, which actually didn't take long.
Ross's suit, the photographer and caterer were all rehired, and also on board to officiate was their good friend and local church minister, Jeff Howarth.
It was a very happy day.
In front of 80 guests, with her 2 daughters as bridesmaids, Julie's son walked her down the aisle. She wore the silver heart necklace Ross had given her when they first fell in love. Can you remember the look on Ross's face when he saw you coming down the aisle?
Oh, I think he was, he was a little choked up. It just all went so quickly. So, he was full of anticipation of his new life ahead.
I feel a lot more at peace from Julie's love, from this whole new way of life. I've left the past behind. I don't have to look over my shoulder anymore.
Ross was focused on looking forward, but keen to resume the fight to prove his innocence. And he chose to do it with a new legal team. Lawyers Barry Hart and Warren Simpson came in to replace Bob Hesketh. Can you remember why Ross decided to go with Barry Hart and Warren Simpson?
No, I don't. No, I honestly can't, because we really liked Bob. So I don't know what happened there.
In late 1994, while Ross's new lawyers had the go-ahead to go back to the Court of Appeal, they instead proposed an ambitious new strategy. They would petition the Governor-General for a royal pardon to quash Ross's conviction outright. Here's Barry Hart speaking to One News at the time.
We spent hundreds of hours of time putting together the petition, and obviously we're hopeful that he'll be pardoned in due course.
Now I need to point out, royal pardons in New Zealand are extremely rare. To receive one, Ross had to show not only that he was wrongfully convicted, but also prove he was factually innocent of Darcy's murder. Despite the long odds, Ross was sold on the idea. The first step Hart and Simpson took was to get the Court of Appeal to adjourn the hearing of Ross's case in November 1994. This was to enable them to file more evidence in support of a pardon petition. And with all that had emerged since the 1992 retrial, Ross had reason to feel confident. This only increased when in 1995 he received a bundle of new information about Ernie out of the blue.
I started getting copies of all of Ernie's letters to the ministers and lawyers and records of what the policemen had been saying in Christchurch. I'd been asking for information for years, and suddenly it started arriving in the post. I don't know what made someone decide to send it to me, but I do want to say thank you.
And I've been drawing from them for this podcast.
I was staggered to learn this when my latest team of lawyers finally got from the police some of the letters the con man had written to the police. This was received by us in 1995, 10 years later, and many years after the second trial when I was convicted.
I'd hoped to discuss all of this with Barry Hart and Warren Simpson, but unfortunately Simpson died a few years ago, and Barry Hart, well, he didn't return my calls or messages. But in 1997, Hart told One News he thought the new material showed Ernie hadn't told the truth when he testified against Ross.
Letters that he wrote basically indicating his real lack of knowledge, suggesting that the police wanted so much for someone that could give so little. That's hardly consistent with a man that said he was an eyewitness to murder.
In my view, there's no doubt Hart and Simpson chose a difficult legal path. If it came off, it would clear Ross's name and come with a hefty compensation payout. Ross fully endorsed the plan, and ultimately it was his decision. But it was a path that eventually came up short. Ross's request for a pardon was denied by the Governor-General in 1997. The only place left for Ross to go was back to the Court of Appeal. But as we now well know, he never got there. According to Warren Simpson's last file note, in June 2008, more than a decade after officials referred Ross's case back to the Court of Appeal for the second time, Ross had, quote, pulled the plug in frustration and exhaustion on continuing efforts to fight his conviction. As we've already heard, Julie says it was Ross's worsening heart failure that finally forced him to stop.
It was gradual. His lawyer was at Papakura and Ross could not make that trip out there.
Ross and Julie lived on Auckland's North Shore, nearly 50 kilometres from Simpson's Papakura office. With the ever-present traffic, it could easily be more than an hour's drive each way.
He just felt like it was just going around in circles and nothing was coming of it. And his health was deteriorating so bad that he could not drive to Papakura. And initially he started out and he was very enthusiastic about it, but in the end he had to give up. His mother lived out there and he couldn't even drive out to see her. His health he was in bad shape. He was really in bad shape.
Ross's health problems also meant he had to retire from his job as a painter and decorator. Julie said it was really tough for a man who wasn't used to giving in.
That really weighed heavily on him. He had to put this on the back burner and concentrate on himself and getting through his condition.
And that's what they did. Concentrated on living Ross's best life in the time he had left. But it turned out that was only about 5 years. Ross died in 2013, and Julie assumed his appeal rights went with him. It meant when Warren Simpson asked her what she wanted done with the 13 boxes of files for Ross's case, Julie said they could be binned. That was almost 10 years before the courts allowed appeals to be continued after a person had died.
So to resurrect the appeal or to ask that it be heard, we've filed a memorandum with the Court of Appeal.
This is Julie's lawyer, Kerry Cook.
And the court has the ability to do that now, even though Ross is dead.
To resurrect the appeal, Kerry's teamed up with lawyer Nick Chisnell KC and investigator Tim McKinnell. It's a job made harder by the fact that despite an extensive search, police advised McKinnell they lost their original 1985 investigation file.
And And this is Morning Report. Police have apologised to the family of convicted murderer Ross Appelgren after it was discovered they lost the original 1985 investigation file.
Yeah, thousands and thousands of pages, many, many boxes and folders. So it's not the sort of thing that slips down the back of a cabinet.
This is Tim McKinnell talking to RNZ's Corin Dan about the saga of the missing file, which has been unfolding as this podcast rolls out.
And it's not any murder. It's a highly controversial and problematic murder. People have had concerns about it for decades. And so the fact that the file that documents what the police did and didn't do is missing, and that's concerning.
Do we know when it was last accessed?
From what we've been told, it seems like it was retrieved from archives around 2018, 2019, and it perhaps hasn't been seen in its entirety for 6 or 7 years.
When Julie's team discovered the loss, she lodged a complaint with the Independent Police Conduct Authority, the IPCA. Tim McKinnell says they had a look at it, but have not conducted an investigation. Instead, the police had another big hunt around for all those boxes and still came up empty-handed. Detective Inspector Fa'a Va'elua wrote to Julie in April 2025 to say, quote, "We have been unable to locate the file and unfortunately it remains missing. I sincerely apologise."
The police have written to Julie and apologised, which of course was the right thing to do, but that doesn't remedy the situation that she's now in, trying to advance Ross's case all these years later. So I'm not sure how that's going to play out. It's certainly problematic in terms of these historical files. The gold tends to be in those files, and now Julie's robbed of that opportunity.
Did the police give an explanation?
Well, they don't know what happened to it, and so we're left to speculate to some extent. I have a degree of sympathy for the police officers that had the file. It was in a secure police station in a secure part of the building, and it's been taken by somebody. The question arises, of course, who would take it and why?
Detective Va'elua said lessons have been learnt, but that's it. No file. It means Julie's appeal will rely only on what information remains in her grasp and in her attic.
What happens now? I mean, how does Julie and her legal team build a case here without those files? I mean, what do they have access to?
Well, it becomes a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. So some of the file was previously held by Julie and their family. Wesley-Smith's done an excellent job for the podcast Nark and pulling together bits and pieces, and the police have retained some that they needed for other cases. So there are parts of the file available, but the most important stuff is, it seems, gone forever. I think in terms of advancing Ross's case, I think it would be entirely appropriate that where material is missing, then Ross is given the benefit of the doubt in those circumstances.
But building the case isn't even the first hurdle Julie's legal team has to face. The first challenge will be explaining to the court why Ross couldn't progress his appeal when he was alive.
We've obtained some medical records that help demonstrate the point. He was at times incredibly unwell. On top of that, the psychological stress of dealing with this appears to have taken a toll on him.
There are thousands of visits and notes and everything from the hospital about what he went through, why he couldn't continue and therefore couldn't continue to go to the Court of Appeal.
I know for a fact that there was a logistical difficulty in advancing the case. Ross and Julie didn't have a lot of money, and as time went on, they just lost momentum.
The next challenge will be demonstrating to the judges that Ross's case, even all these years later, still deserves its day in court.
There is, in my view, fresh evidence, and there is evidence that substantially undermines the Crown case, and there is evidence that calls into question the integrity of the Crown case. And so on those bases, I think the appeal, in my view, is a strong one.
It's important to emphasise that the Governor-General, acting on advice from the Ministry of Justice, already determined in 1994 that Ross may have been the subject of a miscarriage of justice. That was because of the Crown's failure to disclose the confession from inmate Danny in 1990 to prison guards Dominic Malcolm.
Stood there and said himself had organised the hit.
And Mark Anthony,
immediately said that it was nothing to do with Appelgren.
Here's Kerry Cook again.
I think that's incredibly important evidence. In a case where you've got Ross denying that he is the offender and that someone else has clearly bashed and killed Mr. Tahira, then that's very important evidence that a jury should get to. And it also is relevant as well to another crucial issue in the trial, which was Ernie's credibility. And it's probably, I'm using the word credibility on purpose there because it actually was Ernie's honesty and whether Ernie was telling the truth in the evidence that he gave, not just his reliability, whether even though he's honest, he might be mistaken.
But would Danny's confession alone be enough to knock over Ernie's damning eyewitness account? One that we heard convinced Ernie's first lawyer, Paddy O'Driscoll.
Well, he struck me as genuine in his concerns. He wasn't bullshitting me. You know, he was telling me the situation as he saw it.
One that left an impression on journalist Robert Mannion at the retrial.
I was, at the very least, open to the idea that maybe this guy is telling the truth.
And most importantly of all, was one that convinced two juries, as well as the judges at Ross's failed 1992 appeal.
He was in the kitchen at the time. Plainly, he had seen something of the incident. The transcript of his cross-examination suggests an almost passionate rejection of allegations that he had fabricated his evidence for his personal advantage.
Ross and his supporters have long seized on the fact that Ernie went from initially telling police he saw nothing to saying he witnessed everything. But as the 1992 appeal judges fairly pointed out,
his explanation for that untruthfulness was not implausible.
Yes, Ernie was a 200 times convicted fraudster, but even convicted conmen are capable of telling the truth. And it was reasonable to think Ernie would fear for his safety. After all, a narc is a marked man.
Then, having decided to divulge what he had seen, he remained consistent in his account of it. He was unshaken in a lengthy and testing cross-examination.
Different judges will look at Ross's latest appeal, but they're still likely to place some weight on their predecessor's assessment of Ernie's evidence. And I think it's really essential that anyone who has listened to this podcast understand this. In the eyes of the last appeal court to assess Ernie's evidence against Ross in 1992, he was a credible and compelling witness. Yes, Ross's legal team will say the big caveat to that court finding is that the judges didn't hear all of the evidence I've set out in my investigation. But in the decades since, Ernie has remained rigidly consistent.
I never once could have said I made this up as it did happen. There's no advantage to me making up a story to suit anyone. It was tested in court 2 times. Ross was guilty of doing the hit.
It's possible the belief that Ross would need more than Danny's confession was what prompted his former legal team to adjourn his appeal in 1994. To gather more evidence, in particular anything that cast doubt on Ernie's credibility, which, as we know, is what Ross's conviction hangs on. Kerry Cook again.
It genuinely went, as I have read matters, to whether or not Ernie was telling the truth and whether he had incentives to lie. And given the evolution of his statements from not really seeing much to seeing the whole thing.
Cook says the basic blueprint to Ross's current appeal is to be found in his last successful one. From 1990, when his first conviction was quashed after the Crown's failure to disclose documents, including Ernie's first police statements, which didn't mention he witnessed a murder.
There can be no doubt that some, at least, of the papers to which we've referred contain a version in conflict with the evidence given by Ernie for the Crown at the trial, and that it is material.
The courts have said prosecutors must give the defence any evidence which would have a significant bearing on a Crown witness. This specifically included benefits given to Crown witnesses in return for their testimony, which was a rule in place at the time of Ross's retrial. When that rule's been broken in other cases, it has resulted in convictions being thrown out. So it's a big deal, not some minor technicality. And we now know there was plenty of material related to Ernie's credibility not disclosed to Ross's lawyers or the jury at the retrial.
I think a jury would have received significant benefit from this other evidence.
By now, you'll be familiar with much of this other evidence. But let's run through what I think are the most important bits of information the defence and jury didn't get to consider.
There was a broken paddle.
We have Robert Ogier, the ambulance officer and new witness who treated Darcy and whose account contradicts Ernie's evidence that Ross left the crime scene with the murder paddle.
It was lying between the patient and the pot.
I mean, it's entirely contradictory. And again, that witness, on the face of it, is entirely credible, neutral, independent. And I would put a great deal of weight on that.
We have the unrecorded murder reconstruction on which it appears Chief Detective Inspector Peter Jenkinson identified Ernie as the main witness and Ross as the main suspect.
And he said that Mr. Stedman had narrowed it down to 2 people that had been in the kitchen at that time that could have done what was done.
We now know Mr. Stedman, Jim Stedman, the guard on duty when Darcy was attacked, was never recorded as saying any such thing. Then there's the revelation that Ernie was initially considered a suspect by police, that he'd either seen it or done it.
And we don't believe it was you, so you must have seen who it was. Or was it you?
There is effectively pressure being put on Ernie in terms of his position and what it is he might need to say to save his own skin.
Investigator Tim McKinnell says it's also crucial that the jury weren't told Ernie's first recorded identification of Ross as the killer came only after police informed him he was being eyed up as a suspect.
Do you agree that it provided an answer to the question posed by the Court of Appeal? You know, that, well, no one else had offered a reason as to why Ernie was lying.
Yeah, well, that's right. It provides an answer, and it's concerning that wasn't before either of the juries. It's more than concerning. It's deeply troubling.
Adding to the questions surrounding Ernie's pivotal 10th of January meeting with Jenkinson is that it wasn't formally recorded as protocol required.
You cannot have off-the-books conversations with a crucial witness.
And the prosecution didn't detail what was discussed at this meeting at either trial. Which begs the question, if it was all above board, what was there to hide? The list goes on. The retrial jury weren't told. Detectives who dealt with Ernie before Darcy was killed concluded he was, to them, an inveterate liar.
Absolutely, it should have been disclosed, and Defence Counsel would have made good use of that because that was recorded by police officers that had nothing to do with this case.
Then there was documentary evidence that Kerry Cook believes suggests some of Ernie's testimony denying an early deal with police was untrue.
There's clear evidence of his knowledge of the benefits that he's getting because he instructed his lawyer to do it, but moreover, he's written his own letters about it. And I think that the smoking gun, if I can put it that way, are his own handwritten notes requesting those things.
And remember what those things were. Right from the start, a move from a prison cell to a motel room, a TV, stereo, meals out, day trips, early release, and $30,000 in cash. Against that background, Cook points to Ernie's answer to a question asked by Ross's lawyer, Peter Williams, at the retrial.
Had you made any negotiations prior to making that statement with the police?
No, I had not.
Which Cook says is at odds with Jenkinson's 1986 report saying,
I have discussed this with Ernie and he would be happy with a new identity and sufficient funds for him to relocate himself.
Ernie also testified that
what negotiations were done, I gave my lawyer what I wanted, and because of pure inducement reasons to come to court today, I have not wanted to know what the legal or the whole setup was. I just didn't want to know about it.
The jury also didn't have Ernie's letter to police in May 1985, where he wrote,
I want $5,000 in country of origin, which isn't unreasonable, and a free passport, driver's license, no convictions attached, a work visa, air ticket too. I would of course welcome any shorter time in prison.
And during cross-examination by Williams, Ernie said this about his $30,000 from police.
Money paid to me was totally for relocation.
The jury wasn't told police and Ernie had actually characterised this payment, in their own words, as being a reward. Nor did the jurors hear the police advice to Ernie that, you perform for us and we'll look after you. Or Ernie's claim he'd been told by Jenkinson he'd only get his cash in early release should the case against Ross be successful. And who could forget the early release dangled in front of Ernie by justice officials only to be later withdrawn? And then there was Ernie's demand in 1990 to police that Keith Davies later reported on.
And he wanted, wait for it, $555,000 with no taxes, unconditional.
Police didn't agree to pay Ernie $500,000, but there were plenty of other benefits to him the jury weren't informed of. The thousands of dollars paid by police for Ernie's legal fees, detectives not charging him for stealing socks, the help given to Ernie's wife to get New Zealand citizenship, enabling her to continue living with Ernie in Australia. It was a lot, and it incensed Ross when he first learned of it in 1995 after receiving all those documents out of the blue.
I believe it is very clear that the police helped the con man cook up a story to get me convicted. If he really saw someone commit the murder, how could he possibly believe he had little to offer? He did not see it done, but because the police had settled on me as the suspect, he would sing their song to sink me. The song was to the tune of $40,000 and freedom in Australia. The first conviction had been quashed because they had held back information from my lawyers. To go on with a second trial, still holding back this vital information, is something which I do not have words to describe.
But there was one more advantage given to Ernie that I don't think even Ross fully grasped. And that was the fact that police knew Ernie was living illegally in Australia before, during, and after the retrial.
It's undoubtedly something that the jury should have had brought to their attention one way or another.
And allied to that was a police job sheet of a pre-second trial meeting Peter Jenkinson, the head detective, had with Ernie in Australia as part of an effort to get him back to testify at the second trial, where they got into an argument.
Now, just a reminder, this Jenkinson job sheet was the one unearthed by the Sunday Star Times newspaper in 1997.
And effectively, Jenkinson said that if they wanted to, the police could play dirty, which leaves open a possible argument that Ernie knew that the police had a sort of Damocles hanging over him where they could put his continued residence in Australia at real risk should he not cooperate with them.
Yeah, that job sheet might be accurate. That might be all that needed to be said. Was Ernie in a vulnerable position at the time? The answer to that is it appears so.
So that's again another powerful motivation, isn't it, to have him testify?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, while Ernie was the leading man in the Crown's case, let's not forget he wasn't alone. There was Martin and Gordon, both of whom did things after the retrial that, in my view, raised serious issues regarding their reliability. There were the doubts Martin cast on his own testimony, which he shared on Talkback Radio in 1993.
I actually believe, even to this day, what I said was true, but then I don't think it is.
Did he convince himself of something that never happened?
My first takeaway was, why would you make that phone call? It appears to be wanting to unburden himself and then is caught in the headlights. It's extraordinary and well worth further and closer examination.
And Gordon's revelations to journalists Keith Davies and Keith Slater in 1994.
He admitted that he'd lied at both trials, and the police told him he had to say Appelgren told him that he had bashed Tahira.
If accepted, really important evidence, and that you talk about the strands in a rope that make up a prosecution case, it's a relatively significant strand that falls away.
If people think they can go along and lie in court and escape consequences, that's a hugely worrying thing for our criminal justice system. It strikes right at the heart of it.
I'm not after revenge. I just think they should be made accountable in some degree. I don't know what. I mean, you or I commit perjury, we get punished for it.
The prosecution, judges and defence in both trials all agreed on one thing. The case against Ross Appelgren lived and died on the jury's assessment of Ernie's credibility and his motivations for giving evidence. No human is a foolproof lie detector or lie catcher. All juries can do is make an assessment on the evidence before them. But what is absolutely vital is that they are actually given all the relevant information to consider. As the prosecutors told Ross's retrial, it is the duty of the prosecution to put before the jury all evidence that bore on questions of guilt or innocence. But for decades, Ross and his lawyers have argued it never happened in this case. Furthermore, they say the evidence not given to the jurors raised a reasonable doubt that Ernie's motivations in testifying were entirely altruistic. And significantly, at least as it relates to the non-disclosure of Danny's apparent confession, the Governor-General and justice officials agreed Ross may have been the subject of a miscarriage of justice. By now you're probably thinking, okay, we've heard a lot from Ross's side, but what about the Crown and police? It's a very fair question. Throughout this podcast, I've second-guessed myself out loud and told you what I've found could reliably undermine Ross's claims of innocence. Unfortunately, we haven't had any luck with those closely involved in Ross's investigation and prosecution. Former detectives who worked on the case either didn't reply to me or said they prefer not to say anything. The first trial prosecutor, Stuart Grieve KC, declined to comment. Bruce Squire QC, the lead prosecutor at the second trial, is now dead. His offsider, Chris Morris, turned down our interview request. Crown Law, which oversees all prosecutions in New Zealand, said because Ross's appeal is back before the courts, they couldn't comment. And for the same reason, police said they can't answer questions, but said they remain committed to commenting when they are in a position to do so. However, what I can tell you is that based on the last time Ross's case was in court in 1994, more than 30 years ago, authorities said Ross was fairly and rightly convicted, and they denied any information was withheld at the retrial. So that's what they said in 1994. But by 1997, they appear to have changed their tune. In a recently disclosed police report, which has not been made public before, I found a summary of the detectives' dealings with Ernie from the date of the murder right up to the start of the retrial. It includes some of the material I've already described in this episode. The report states, and I quote, "Some of this information is still very confidential, as it has not been traversed in the criminal proceedings or disclosed through the discovery process." When I read this, I was like, what specifically was this undisclosed information, and why was it kept secret? Well, that is a question Ross's legal team hope to answer in his new appeal.
There are appeals that go on for a long time, but this is not just an appeal. It's sort of a special type of appeal where the Governor-General, so the monarch's representative, has said to the court, hey, something might be up about this. I'd like you to hear it and have it again. And it's just very odd that in those circumstances, nothing's happened about this until very recently when Nick Chisnell has picked it up, and I've picked it up as well.
In November 2024, Cook, Chisnell and McKinnell received a setback when Crown Law said it would oppose the effort to have Ross's appeal finally heard. Crown lawyers effectively said Ross had had the opportunity to advance his case when he was alive, but failed to do so, and it was now too late to rectify that.
I don't think that the court should or will hold Ross solely responsible.
Cook says he'll be arguing the Crown also had a responsibility to ensure the case was progressed.
I think that the Crown does have a duty to ensure that these appeals are heard, and the Crown, with its resources and knowledge, should have kept on top of it.
But is there another reason for the Crown's opposition? Well, Tim McKinnell suggests perhaps prosecutors don't want to confront the serious allegations of perjury and withheld evidence arising out of Ross's 1992 retrial.
There ought to be a requirement on the state to not be party to the covering up of conduct that is entirely unacceptable. An alternative approach they could take is, we don't want to revisit this case, but we are going to have a look at some of the very serious allegations that are emerging in relation to this particular case. They haven't done that. They're just saying Ross didn't do enough when he was sick and under-resourced, and so that should be the end of it. And I completely disagree with that.
This will all have to be hashed out in court. For now at least, Ross's widow Julie feels quietly optimistic that this time, finally, Ross will receive the justice he fought so long for.
Why is it important for you?
Well, to finish what I signed up for when I met Ross, and you know, obviously I would never have walked away from it.
So you see it as like possibly being one last kind of gift to him?
Yeah, definitely. I knew that once you were on the case,
Yeah.
It was going to continue, and it's still continuing. But now I can feel it's on
the road.
It is. Yeah, I look forward to what comes next.
What comes next? That's a question that's also occupying the mind of Suzanne Young, the widow of the other man at the centre of this story, a man often forgotten amidst all the other drama, Darcy Tahira, her Tony.
Is that right?
Yep. Suzanne's flown to meet me in Wellington, New Zealand's capital, a place notorious for its high winds and stomach-churning experiences offered up to those who dare to land at its airport.
It was so good. No bumps, no nothing. We had no turbulence whatsoever.
And you were absolutely certain you landed in Wellington?
Yep.
When people talk about non-disclosure in the context of a murder case, it's often focused on what the accused and their lawyers weren't told. But sometimes it's the family of the victim also left in the dark. Let's put it simply. When you turned up to court, what were you hoping to hear?
Well, obviously, the truth of what actually happened.
And is that what you think you got?
No.
And what happened in court was the end of a long list of moments Suzanne felt let down by. Was it a police officer or a prison officer who told you that Tony had been assaulted and not simply had a seizure?
Neither. It was the actual, the doctor at the hospital.
Were you told by the authorities, and that includes the police, prison staff or prosecutors, that Tony's crime scene had been cleaned up before the police arrived?
No.
Were you told by any of the authorities that it took 6 hours for the police to be called?
No.
Were you told about the police investigation into alleged corruption in Mount Eden, which reportedly arose out of information police received during the inquiry into Tony's death?
No.
Were you ever given a briefing by the police or prosecutors prior to trial as to what they believed had happened to Tony?
No.
Or were you left to find out like everyone else at the trials?
Basically.
Suzanne says she was never told that the Crown's main two witnesses, Ernie and Gordon, had been nominated as suspects, or why they were ruled out. She also says it's only through this podcast that she learned why Ross's case was referred back to the court, that confession from Danny.
Why would somebody admit to actually saying, I put a hit on Tony?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that would be repercussion to him too.
Yeah. Would you like to have known all this information we've just discussed?
Well, obviously.
Overall, how would you describe the level to which you were kept informed by prison staff, police and prosecutors?
At this point in time, I'm so angry, really angry, of the whole shabacle, of the whole thing. I suppose it's because it was in prison. It's probably harder. But wherever it was, you should always
do the right thing.
Yeah, do the right thing.
I then took Suzanne through all of what I found during my investigation. Has any of the information you've learned since the trials changed your belief about his guilt?
To be honest, I'm going to be honest, no.
Bear in mind, Suzanne has an informed perspective that few people do in this case. She saw Ross testify to his innocence not once, but twice under oath. Did you believe what he was saying at the time?
No.
But then Suzanne said something which surprised me. I asked her if she believed Ernie's account, someone she'd also seen testify twice in court.
To be honest, I didn't believe a word anybody said.
You don't believe Ernie?
No.
Suzanne told me she wanted to believe Ernie. She still does. But she says her faith in his evidence has been significantly dented. Were you told that police initially considered Ernie a suspect?
No.
Why he was considered a suspect?
No.
And why the police had ruled him out as one?
No.
She's also angry police breached their own protocol, with detectives suggesting to Ernie he could get cash and relocation overseas for helping them before he gave his formal statement.
They turned around and offered that first.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, does that not say something?
What to you does it say?
They've bought him. They've actually bought him to say a whole lot of crap to suit their situation.
So with all that, what does Suzanne base her belief in Ross's guilt on? Well, that question led to Suzanne's second surprise for me.
I had a person who was an ex-inmate and came and knocked on my front door and openly said to me that Appelgren had done it.
She says this random visit from this former inmate occurred a few years after the retrial.
He was a slight, wiry, white guy, darkish hair, short hair, I'd say 40-ish. He just sort of had stubble. He'd probably be about 5'7", 5'8".
She can't recall his name and isn't 100% certain he wasn't one of the inmates that testified in court. So I showed Suzanne photos of Ernie and Martin as they appeared during the trials.
So this is Ernie?
No.
No.
No,
That's not
definitely
the person
not.
that came to your
No,
talk?
definitely
Okay.
not.
This is Martin?
No.
No, not him.
No.
Frustratingly, I didn't have pictures of Gordon. So Suzanne's visitor, at least for now, remains a mystery.
He said, I need to tell you, don't know why, thought it was very strange that someone would go out of their way and try and find me, knock on my front door and tell me that Appelgren had done it. I don't see any other reason apart from, obviously, he had a conscience.
So you consider that was the most useful bit of information you had?
Yep. It's just so long ago, I can't. I've been absolutely playing on my mind to try and put a name to this face. And it's quite infuriating.
More than any sliver of evidence she heard across 2 different trials, it was this momentary encounter with a stranger at her door that solidified her confidence that Ross Appelgren killed her Tony. As I've outlined in this podcast, there are other good reasons to doubt Ross's innocence. That includes his vague evidence about exactly when he went to the toilet the morning Darcy was killed, his failure to mention his alibi defence or alibi witness when first interviewed by police or even at the first trial, and his suspicious decision to not tell either of the juries or police he knew beforehand Darcy was in for a bashing and had a fair idea of who was in on it. Despite all that, Suzanne's worried the new effort to overturn Ross's conviction could succeed not because of his guilt or innocence, but because police and prosecutors failed to disclose relevant evidence to the defence and the jury at the retrial.
Would you be angry at the prosecutors and police if that is what the outcome is?
Yes, I would be. They didn't give a damn about me then, and they still don't now. Life has gone on for them as nothing has happened. But me, myself, have suffered and still suffering. One does not know until you go through it what I did.
If a court rules Ross's trial was so fundamentally flawed his conviction should be quashed, then that's fair for him. Fair for Julie. But where's the fairness in that for Suzanne?
Does anybody else care? No. And that's why I say it's bullshit.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it's bullshit.
Yeah. Because, you know, it could be, and then I don't know, that some of the information we have uncovered might actually help Appelgren get off. So I would understand it totally if you were like, oh, bloody hell, Mike.
Not that it's going to do him a lot of good because he has passed, and perhaps that's karma. I'm sorry I should to say that.
No, I can understand
that's
that.
karma.
When I first thought of doing this podcast, I thought I'd be spending my time with hardened crims, straight-faced cops and suited lawyers. As I tried to work out what the hell happened to Darcy that morning in the kitchen, a murder and aftermath punctuated with all manner of motivations. Anger, revenge, fear, personal gain, self-protection, denial, and defiance. But the one that has left the biggest mark on me was the motivation of Julie and Suzanne, two ordinary women who loved and lost men from the wrong side of the tracks, and now want to find out the truth of what happened to them. Talking to them, getting to know them over the past couple of years, they've shown me nothing but grace and decency. Someone they didn't know to start, who was prodding and probing their most sensitive memories. I've asked myself more than once, lots of times actually, what can I give them in return? Apart from reopening old wounds, what's been the point? All I thought I could offer was some answers, because frankly, I've been amazed at what both were never told.
He would be, well, he'd be overawed at what's being uncovered now.
For her part, Julie's spirits are buoyed by what this podcast has uncovered for her and Ross.
He would be very happy how it's progressing.
However steep the climb ahead, Julie at least has the potential to deliver the ending Ross always wanted. And Suzanne? Well, whatever happens, nothing will change the fact that her husband was murdered, a life dreamed of, taken from her.
It has affected me, and I'm not denying the fact that it has.
I felt personally a bit ashamed of causing you trauma for having to bring this all up again.
Yeah.
And it's not about me, but I wouldn't be human if I didn't tell you that I felt, and maybe still do, well, definitely still do, responsible for that.
I've said to everybody that knows about it, if it wasn't for you, that you've helped me.
Okay.
I've been able to talk to you. I've been able to express how I feel. I've been because you've investigated, you knew what happened. I mean, finally somebody can actually hear my side.
Yeah. Why did you choose to respond to me when I wrote to you?
Because I deep down knew that there was this feeling I had that, again, I was right.
That you hadn't been told the whole story about Tony's death?
Yeah. And when I got that letter and then you started talking to me, and I thought, oh my God, I couldn't believe that you would actually take on something like this and actually think, oh, perhaps it's... And I'm thinking, praise the Lord.
You never know what faith or fate has waiting around the next corner. Darcy certainly didn't as he entered the Mount Eden prison kitchen that morning on the 6th of January 1985. A man feeling good. When I said that at the very start of this podcast, you may have asked, how did I know that? Well, it's because of a letter Darcy wrote to the Mount Eden superintendent only weeks before he died. I found it inside Darcy's prisoner file, which Suzanne handed to me. The letter was full of his hopes of getting out, his hopes for a future with his new wife.
It's very poignant, and I want to give you the opportunity to say, no, I don't want to hear it.
No, go on.
You do?
Yeah.
Suzanne hadn't been able to bring herself to read all of Darcy's prison documents. With me, it was the first time she had heard this letter.
Dear Sir, I am serving 6 months in Mount Eden prison. My date of release
is the 9th of January 1985. I have just recently got married to a lovely lady, and we have our own home and we both work. I have a job to go to on my release from prison. It is the first time in my life that I've had this chance to make something of my life.
I know in my heart I will not be back.
I can honestly say, with the help of my wife and her mother and father and the Lord, I know in my heart I will not be back, as I'm now 40 years old. I'm asking to see if I could have some home leave for Christmas. My release date just falls short of the Christmas remission. All I can do, sir, is leave it in your hands. I hope you can take my submission into care.
Thank you very much. Yours faithfully, DC Tahira.
Sorry, I hadn't read it.
Sorry, I wasn't sure if I should have read that to you.
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Tony now rests in the manicured grounds of a church in Mangere Bridge, a world removed from the grim cold prison in which he died. The mechanical noises of the Mount-Eden kitchen replaced with the sounds of birds and the otherwise peaceful silence one finds in cemeteries. At the centre of Tony's headstone is a picture of him on his wedding day. With a huge grin, he looks full of anticipation at what the future would hold. A poignant reminder of who he was and all that he and Suzanne lost. The words inscribed on the headstone read, "Beloved husband of Suzanne, when to the sessions of sweet silent thought we summon up remembrance of things past." And from time to time, Suzanne comes to see her beloved Tony, along with her daughter. She's not Tony's daughter, but Suzanne's told her all about him.
She says, "Oh my God, I think out of all your relationships, Mum, I still think you love Tony the most."
And would you agree with that?
It seems only fitting to lead this story, for now, with a statement Suzanne prepared about her Tony.
It struck me even more now as to why we loved each other. He had the largest heart and just wanted a family that cared and accepted him for who he was. My mum and dad, I've just lost it. Oh my God, where have I? My mum and dad thought the world of him, and my gran thought he was just the bee's knees. We had such a short time together, but at least he knew he had a family that loved him so dearly. Tony, rest in peace. I love you very much.
Thanks for listening to Nark, hosted and written by me, Mike Wesley-Smith. That was the final episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to use the share button and recommend it to a friend. Thanks to everyone who spoke to me for this podcast, especially Suzanne Young and Ross Appelgren. A massive thank you also to my wonderful wife Lucy for all her support and wise words of advice throughout this years-long project. And to my 4 young kids, Evelyn, Sylvie, James and Hugo, I can finally catch up on the many games of Uno, Connect 4 and kicks with a ball in the backyard that I owe you. Some more quick thank yous to Ngā Taonga and Mediaworks for some of the archival audio, and to the voice actors who helped bring some of the characters in this episode to life. Craig Genty, Richard Larson, Nigel Collins, Peter McElwain, Phil Vine and Will Plummer. The RNZ producers who worked on this episode were Liz Garton and Justin Gregory. The audio engineer was William Saunders. Thanks also to Steve Burridge and Jeremy Ansell for the studio wrangling, and to Kevin Golding for opening the doors to me every week after hours. Graphics were designed by Amrita Marks, and the shorthand page where you can find more information on this story was made by Hingyi Kong. Check it out at rnz.co.nz/nark. Tim Watkin is RNZ's Executive Editor Audio, and Brianna Uritich-Gregg is the Production Coordinator. You can find more of RNZ's great podcasts, like Here Now, on the RNZ website, rnz.co.nz/podcasts.